Many people hate giving speeches in front of large groups, but for some that experience can be downright traumatic. I happen to be one of those people. Wait, let me rephrase that. I happened to be one of those people. In this video, I want to talk about my experiences of dealing with my fear of public speaking and what are some of the ways and techniques that I have come to address that issue. So let me preface this video by saying that I used to be one of those people who was too terrified to raise their voice, to tell a stranger, "Excuse me," so I can have them step out of the way, or to speak in groups of 4 or more, even if those people are my friend. So you can imagine that my experiences with public speaking were catastrophic. And it all started way back in kindergarten with an innocent little play called Chicken Little. I made my acting debut as a tree. I wasn't even good enough to be a barnyard animal. And in this play, I had about 2 lines, and that was it. But I managed to flub that up. And it happened right when the play was going on, and then one of the parents pulled out a camcorder. And then another one had a camcorder. And I started feeling nervous all over. I started shaking in my little cardboard tree costume, and my eye was zoomed in on that little red light on the camcorder. And I said my line way too early. Not only did I say it early, I said it in the middle of one of the songs. And if I was lucky enough, it would have been drowned out. But no, it was during a slight pause in the song. And I said my one little line. And I was absolutely mortified. I mean, it was embarrassing enough to be wearing what looked like a Christmas tree. But to mess up that one line, I wanted to run away and cry. At least I didn't. In this story, I didn't. Later on experiences, that's happened. So, my fear of public speaking was, the situations kind of got worse from there. In 6th grade, I consider myself a very talented writer, and many other people consider that I do have some talented writing. And in 6th grade, it was noticed. It was during a speech writing contest, and the teacher was like, "I want to have you perform your speech. Your speech was wonderful." And I heard the word "perform," and I was like, no, I'm okay. You know, you can like do whatever you want with the speech, but me perform it? No, you can hire somebody to do that. I'm not going to. And she was like, "You have to." And I remember telling her, for word, I said, "That's not much of a prize." And she said, "I don't care." So my reward for working very hard on the speech and proving to have some lyrical prose to it, I got to read it in front of the whole school. And not just the school, but judges, state judges, because this was like a countrywide competition. And the subject was about listening. So the last thing I wanted anybody to do was listen to my speech. So there I am, getting ready for my speech, and all the judges had their special table set up because, you know, you have to make it look very official. This is elementary school after all. Elementary school competition, you gotta make it look very official. And the teacher drilled it into us that you get a lot of points if you don't use index cards. So guess what I did? I didn't use index cards. Guess what happened? And yes, that happened. So I started giving my speech, and 10 seconds in, I stood there. I forgot everything. I think I said a bit of the conclusion, then I jumped to point number 2, and then point number 1. And my whole speech was essentially about the idea of everyone listens, but the fact that you're hearing words is not important because most people just hear the words. The important thing is to listen to the message. I know it's not a very deep speech, but for like a sixth grader, you know, I thought there was some depth to it. But I was standing there seeing the whole school right there, you know, including all of my classmates, a couple people I had a crush on. So you know, that's to win them over, of course, is to look like a complete fool and look like you're about to cry in front of the entire school, you know, because that gets you dates. And I stood there for a minute trying to remember, and then I hurried off the stage. And of course, right after me was this very extroverted girl who her entire speech was, "I'm talking, listen to me. I'm talking, so listen to me." And that's not me doing an over-exaggeration. That was like literally lines from her speech. It's basically how she wants people to listen to her. So, you know. So she did well. Still did not cry. At home I did. At home I wanted to. But I did end up crying a little bit later from one of my other stories coming up. So I've had a lot of other really bad experiences, like giving speeches in the middle of class and just being like, I had my paper right up here, so I'm afraid to look at anybody because, you know, this would protect me. Looking at the words, looking at the page, if I could just see the page, pretend I'm just talking to the page. Me and the piece of paper having a great conversation about whatever school topic I had to write a speech on. Just look at the paper. Only the paper is there. The paper is your friend. So, of course, I couldn't talk loud enough. I was terrified to even like raise up my voice a bit, and those were very nerve-wracking experiences. I was all shaking. My palms were all sweaty. I'm feeling sweaty all over and gross, and just literally, if the class had a podium, I would grab onto the podium because I would be shaking, and you can hear the podium hitting like the floor a little bit because I was shaking it so much. And so it was just not a good experience, and I could not get better at public speaking. It just got worse, I think. And it all culminated into, well, there was the one great debate that I had to prepare for, except that this was in college, and like the rest of my team dropped the course because they thought the course was too hard, and the other team dropped the course. So it was me debating nobody, and my other teammates were responsible for different parts. So I did not have an introduction, I didn't have a conclusion, I just had my points for this debate. And I was debating by myself. Oh joy, you know, like how wonderful just to not only be on the spotlight. You know, the debate thing I wasn't as worried about because I had other people. I could be like, read off my facts, and then like, next person, look at them, they're right there, listen to them, I'm not here, listen to them. But no, just me arguing with myself in front of the class. Delightful. But the one time I did cry during a speech, was a language class, and the teacher was like, we're not going to have a written test. And I was like, yeah, we're going to do a speech, you can do a skit in the language, it'll be fun, just make this little skit going, it'll be so much fun. And he's like, we'll do a choice, people can do a fun skit or like written paper. And so everyone's like, oh, fun speech, oh, we can do these funny skits, that'll be so great. And I was like, can I take the written part, please? And so, as with anything, when the class forms into different little groups, I always kind of sit there and like see if there's any other stragglers and be like, hey, you and me, you don't have anybody to work with. We'll make an awesome team. And I guess the people who did work with me are kind of, whatever project, are kind of lucky because I've had people dump most of the work on me, but as long as, I'm not the one who actually has to actively interact with people to form a group, but be just like, hey, you know. So anyways, we had to do like this skit, and everyone's all doing these elaborate like skits, and they're having fun doing all these video things, and I just wanted to practice a rehearsed speech. And the girl I worked with, she was actually kind of like my friend in the class, and so like my only friend in the class actually, and so she was happy, she was fine with that. Well, all I had to do was remember like my lines from a speech within the book, but then we added a portion where we did this like news program. So we were going to do it because the teacher was like, you can't just do that, you have to do something creative too. So we're going to do the speech from the book, and then we set up like this fake news thing, like, oh, you know, Godzilla's going to attack, like really stupid stuff, but whatever, you know. So everyone's having amazing time with this thing, and I was like terrified. I was like, oh my gosh, and everyone's grading each other on their speeches and stuff like that, and so like, it's like, at least there's no camcorder, and then the teacher brings out the camcorder. He's like, I'm going to videotape this. It's like, I don't know, so maybe it's like put on YouTube somewhere, like my complete and utter failure. Well, you know, aside from my videos, that has only a few views. So like, the red light, my eyes focused on the red light, and maybe that's why I hate my video camera on top of my computer. It's a blue light, but like I see that and I kind of freeze up, and that's why my Let's Plays sound like I'm standing there with a gun pointed out to my head. The little light on the camera. But anyway, so I was doing the speech, and then all of a sudden I froze up, and it brought up all the memories of my experiences of public speaking that are absolutely horrible. I was like, why can't I just be normal? I mean, I have the TG issue enough to deal with, so why can't I have everything else in my life should just be normal? I mean, I've already dealing with, you know, the trans stuff, so it's like, something be normal in my life? Can I like feel like a normal person just a little bit? Just like anything? You know, everything I do, even the fact that I'm a picky eater, it's like, why can't I just even have like normal taste buds like everybody? So I ended up crying, and I ran out of the room, and it was caught on video. So I don't know what's being done with the video, but it was horrible. I literally ran out while I was in the front of the room. I'm stumbling over my words now, but I ran out of the room crying. And this, from what I remember, was not a Friday. So I would have to go back to that class tomorrow. Imagine, like, I really had no friends in that class, and sitting down, I didn't know what's worse. People viewing me with pity, or people just thinking it's hilarious, because, well, I guess the latter one would be worse, but still, I worked hard on creating that the speech for the news broadcast, and the other girl that I was working with, I felt really bad for her, because like, why should she be hurt by my complete and utter, like, whatever's wrong with my brain that makes me afraid of public speaking? So I talked to the teacher, and I stressed this to him, like, please do not take off her grade because of my terrifying fear of speaking in front of people. So yeah, I didn't get I got a pretty crappy grade on that, but at least her grade wasn't affected, so I wouldn't feel guilt over that. And that's kind of stems like my experiences with public speaking. Those are the standout moments. Throughout my entire life, I'm terrified of being heard. I'm terrified of anyone knowing that I exist, though I desperately want people to know I exist. So let's get to the portion of how I'm started to get over that. Now, I started to see a counselor about my fear of public speaking. And she actually gave me a lot of great tips. Now, she didn't tell me anything like imagine the audience is naked or anything like that, because I don't think that does anything. That just makes you probably feel like a perv while you're giving your speech. She said one of the things that really stood out for me was that when you start feeling all shaking, your palms are all sweaty and everything like that, is to not fight it. Because usually your impulse is to try to like still yourself, hold yourself still. It's just mentally shouting inside of your head, hopefully not aloud, you know, stay the F still. Stop shaking, stop twitching, stop sweating, stop being nervous. Just stop it. You know, you just feel like if you shout it loud enough in your head to just stop it, stop shaking, it'll work. No, it actually makes you shake even more, makes you even more nervous, makes you even more panicking. And so one of the things that she told me was just to, you know, let those feelings happen. I guess a very Buddhist way to look at it. And it kind of helped, because if you try to control and fight it, it just gets worse. If you just accept it, like, okay, well, just try to get through this, whatever. Don't beat yourself up over the fact that, you know, you're having a reaction. And what's that reaction based on? Why did I cause? Because caring about what other people think. And so maybe it's, you know, it's easy to say don't care what others think, you know, because if I could easily do that, then I wouldn't be dealing with all my other depression issues and anxiety issues about other stuff. But to also, another thing is to practice your speech. Like, you want to be able to just over practice, but don't worry about every little word. Because if you start your speech, and like when I do these videos, I write a script for them, and at the very beginning, I have everything rigidly written, like what I'm going to say. And if I mess up one little word, I hit stop, delete, restart. Because I try to do all these videos in one shot instead of editing. And the fact that, like, when you do that, when you're in front of a group and you don't have the option of having a redo, you completely freeze up, because that one little word nags at you and you're like, oh, that one, why can't I get the word? The word was, you know, and instead of the, or whatever like that. And it completely throws your speech off guard. But what you should do is, even if your speech is let's say it's going to be a complete disaster, what is the one or two important points? Even if you cannot express those as articulately, as beautifully written as you have written your speech, which you should write your speech beforehand, because it helps you thinking. Because if you're the sort of person who's afraid of public speaking, you're not really going to do good on the spot. So think about one or two points that you really want to get across. You might not be able to say it as beautifully as you wish you could, but tell yourself, as long as you get those 2 points across, or whatever, 1 to 3 points, then it's a speech well done. Doesn't have to be something that, I don't know, speech award winner or something. Just, you did what you set out to do. And so that removes some of the restraint. That removes the that if I forget a word, then it's ruined. It's awful. Everything's going to go downhill from here. So have 1 or 2 points that, what's the whole point of, what's the important thing of the speech? What do you really want to get across? You know, sure, flowery details are nice, but as long as you get those 2 points across, it's okay. And the thing is, a lot of people don't notice you are really nervous, unless you did what I did and cry running out of the room. But if you're a little kind of shaky, most people don't notice. I've actually told people afterwards, and they were like, "Oh, I didn't notice." And I've actually had other people tell me they were really nervous. They're like, "Oh my gosh," like, and I saw them, and they looked fine. To be honest, if this is a class speech, most people aren't even really listening to the speech, any speech, not just your speech. Don't be like, "Oh, because my speech sucks, they don't listen." But like any speech, most people in class are just like, "No." They're just thinking about their speech. They want to get their speech over with, and when they get their speech over with, their posture and everything is all relaxed. And they're zoning out. They don't really care. And if they have the greatest speech, they'll listen for one minor, maybe negative point, and then the rest they'll be like 5, 5, 5, or 3, 5. So, yeah, don't really most people get worried during speeches, and most people can't tell that you're nervous. Now you're thinking maybe, oh, of course they can tell. Of course, they can see me shaking. They can, even the people in the back row know my palms are sweaty somehow. Even if they're like planted down on the podium top, they must know. They must know. I know those people in the back row in the corner who are looking out the window, not even listening, not even watching. They must know that my hands are sweaty, that I'm all sweaty, and I can't. Make a little joke before you do the speech. I've actually, like, it's helped me if the speech is, we're not talking like, you're some CEO in front of a big company. Like, we're not talking about, like, if it's like a class assignment, be like, make a little joke, like, oh, I'm a little nervous and everything like that. And you'll find that when you finish the speech, even if you, actually, it allows you a little grace to fumble. Because you're like, well, I'm a little bit nervous, and so, like, people are going to, no one's actually going to really make fun of you. Like, from all of my experience, that, like, at the very beginning of the speech, acknowledging, look, I'm a little bit nervous, but, at the very end, a lot of people actually came up and, said I did a great job, congratulated. It might not have been, like, the most amazing thing they ever have done, but the fact that most people were supportive, and the fact, if you kind of let them know I'm a little bit nervous, people think, most decent people think, way to go, good job. And if you do mess up, you kind of, you gave yourself a little room to, like, so you're not like, oh, like, I bumped into the desk and it made a loud noise during the middle of my speech. Oh no, I'm gonna look so horrible. But if you kind of preface that, like, hey, I'm a bit nervous, but I'm gonna try. And most people come up and they, say that you did a great job, it was fine. And so that actually makes you feel good, because you have other people who are, when you do a speech and you're just like, oh, I'm done, it was so awful, I'm finished, I'm done. But if you have people come up to you and be like, that was pretty good, I mean, it does boost your mood and makes you acknowledge that, hey, I was terrified. I'd rather swim with sharks. They're all a lot nicer than I thought, people were going to behave. But I actually accomplished this. I succeeded, and some people are congratulating you, and that makes you acknowledge your success. So that is kind of my video about my fear of public oh, no. See, I'm fighting the urge to hit stop and delete, but I should say, what this all built up to. Why did I also see the counselor? Well, I auditioned for kind of like a vagina memoir, but it was for LGBT people. And I had, at the end of the quarter, I had to give a presentation, give a performance. So not only was I, it wasn't like some class assignment where I had to pass on some details of, like, some person's life. I had to give a performance piece. And I pushed myself to do this because I was terrified of public speaking. I was like, I gotta do this. And so, and also being the only kind of feeling like the only, like, trans female on campus, I felt that, I don't know, I should have done it, because I don't know. So yeah, I prepared for this. I was terrified, and like my therapist, she was actually like, would it be okay if I come? And she's like, you can say no if you want. And I was like, no, no, no. Like, I actually was very happy because it felt like somebody there rooting for me who knew what I was experiencing, dealing with. And to get in front of a group with over 100 people, like the room was filled to whatever fire code max, and like there was a bunch of people outside listening from like in the hallway with the doors open. It was a rather large room. There was tons of people. A lot of people weren't allowed in because of fire codes, so they were listening from the halls, the doors open. So I had all these feelings of like all my experiences, and I did everything I worked on. I rehearsed this speech over and over and over and over, to even where like I'm walking between class and I'm kind of saying like the lines under my breath and looking like a crazy person doing all this. But I was able to know the speech backwards and forwards and all that. But of course it comes to time when this is going to be one of my largest audiences besides that 6th grade speech. And here I was going to be talking about some rather personal issues. My speech dealt with a lot of, my performance piece was a letter to my parents about how they rejected me. And it also covered some really sensitive issues and stuff such as my prior suicide attempts, which is some pretty big stuff to admit to a large crowd. And also at this time, I was stealth as trans, meaning pretty much very few people knew I was trans. I kind of looked how I did, and everyone just saw me as kind of like a shy, bookwormish girl. They didn't really know the other part. So giving the speech, I would be essentially outing myself in front of a huge crowd that would look at me otherwise and think, oh, just a cisgendered girl. So yeah, the speech went wonderful. I was at first a little nervous, but then when I started getting into it, like I looked people in the eyes, and there was a camera with the red light flashing, and I did not mind looking at that camera. And after the speech, lots of people came up and said I did a phenomenal job. And lots of people came up and said they had no clue I was trans, because they're like, when they saw me, they thought I was going to do a speech about being a lesbian. So it was a wonderful, it went very well. And I still deal with anxiety. I'm a very, very shy person, and I still kind of deal with some anxiety issues. But as for speaking in front of crowds, I'm fine with that now.